All right, welcome back to Under the Tamarisk Tree. Today's conversation is about change, how it happens, why it sticks, and what it means for building a business that lasts. I love it. My guest today is Dr. Khutso Madubanya. She is a change strategist. She's a speaker, an author, and she's the founder of Dance with Change. She's the creator of the Pivot Method, which is a framework for navigating disruption with less fear and more agency, work that she's brought to organizations and leaders around the world. Today, she's applying that expertise to an often overlooked part of business succession, the human and emotional transition experienced by owners, incoming leaders, and the people around them. This is such an important topic for us. And thank you, Dr. Kutso, for being on our show today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Phil. I'm honored to be here.
Well, I'm just really excited. This is such a great topic for our listeners, um, because planning our futures, especially when we're thinking about our businesses and our families. I mean, it's a scary thought to think about change and to really face change, such significant change head on. And so many business owners just they can't do it. They procrastinate. They have fleeting thoughts about the fact that I need to do something, but man, it's the last thing they want to think about. And we see this in our legal practice with our estate planning clients too. Nobody wants to think about this stuff, and so they put it off. And
Yeah,
so this is great timing. There's so many people going through that big change process, and so I'm really excited to hear from you. You can be a really key part of this, and it's an interesting concept to think about this, the human side of it. We're so quick to go to the numbers, get
yeah,
the valuation and get the legal stuff done, but man, the human toll can be immense. So talk to us
absolutely.
about that.
Yeah, well, Phil, as you rightfully pointed out, I'm a change whisperer, as I like to call myself.
Hmm.
The sort of work I do focuses exclusively on the human elements of change. And by that, I
Hmm.
mean what change does to us as individuals, our sense of identity, all that disorientation that comes with it, what we do with the shock and fear, all these bits and pieces that you typically don't even really quite prepare for. Not in the
Hmm.
mainstream sense of the succession planning or life in general, right? We go through
Hmm.
change every day. Um, in organizational change, you'll have your change management specialists who will come in and tell you, well, we're following this transition, this you're going to go here, we have our systems, we have our processes. But what happens when the human is just reluctant
Hmm.
to move with the change? Not because they're being hard, but because they haven't quite made sense of it. They haven't quite found a way to feel empowered, what I call agency in it.
Hmm.
So the work I do really works on people's mindset. I have developed a tool that helps people make change less scary. Essentially,
Hmm.
whether you're a business owner selling, whether you're, a new leader who just bought a business and now you're needing to establish your leadership, and then your teams are used to the old leadership, they don't want to move in. All sorts of
Hmm.
change in that context. Yeah, what I call my framework is what I call it's a cognitive agency framework. That's what it is.
Okay. All right.
Helps people
I,
feel empowered around change.
I want to go deeper into that word agency, but first, I want to go back to a word you talked about. You said you used the word identity,
Yeah,
and that is a really important topic because most business owners have wrapped up their identity in their business. So to think about life beyond their business, whether they're thinking about selling or maybe transitioning to a child, and honestly, a lot of our work is with younger people who are business owners who are just trying to provide for their families, almost like an estate plan. Like, hey, if I don't wake up tomorrow, how does my business go forward without me?
yeah,
And what can I do today to prepare for that? But even that requires an amount of emotional intelligence, maybe. I don't know if that's the right word, but again, thinking about if my business is my identity and I'm contemplating life beyond that, how does someone how do you get there? Like how do you help somebody through that process of dealing with their identity?
Yeah, well, I do that through a couple of modalities. First point, departure point is always going to be a one-on-one brief consultation for me to
Hmm.
understand what your specific needs are and who you are, right? Because somebody looking to sell is sits it from in a very different position than somebody coming into a business now
Hmm.
going to run it, right? And very different from somebody who's a team member, right?
Sure.
So that consultation, the brief consultation, understanding your needs is a good departure point, and from there, I'm able to share with whoever what I call a change resistance diagnostic. It's a snapshot. Yeah, it's an evaluation. Doesn't take very
Hmm.
long. It's on my website actually. Folks are welcome to take it on their own, independent, and then contact me if they need to, unpack it a bit. But from there. I'm able to share with my clients insights from that diagnostic. We understand. Just remember, all the work I do is at the individual level. Even if I'm
Hmm.
addressing an organization and teams, it's
Hmm.
down to the individual and how they process
Got
change.
it. Okay. Because we're all different. We're all
Because
different.
we're all different and we're all
Got it.
different. We interpret change in very different
Hmm.
ways. And the reason why I call my framework an agency framework is because um, I work with you in such a way that you feel you interpret change in a way that you gives you back control or gives you back a
Hmm.
sense of, okay, I can do this. This is not so scary. I can I feel safe
Hmm.
to
Okay.
move towards whatever I'm being asked to move towards.
Hmm.
So you asked how I do that. As I said, one-on-one, we'll do consultation. I'll give you a diagnostic. We will plot out next steps from that diagnosis based on what we discover about what's
Hmm.
holding you back, right? And the modalities I offer, the one-on-one coaching, it can be, or talks. I can give keynotes if you want me to come into your
Hmm.
team, maybe following a leadership change. I can do workshops. This is where we really get to unpack my framework. Pivot is what I
Hmm.
acronym for it, or ongoing advisory sessions where I come in periodically, much like a fractional model, as
Hmm.
change unfolds or as a transition unfolds on a regular basis, once a month or so. I come and support your team, your leadership team that way.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, it just that's so important because for us in the work that I do, I really think that, I wish I could find a way to get you in front of all the people who contemplate reaching out to us who don't because they're stuck and they're afraid. But until they reach out to us, we can't really help them. So, man, the more we can get the word out that, hey, we have resources, there are people that have expertise in these areas that can help facilitate that. I think about the aging clients that we work with who are in their 70s who uh, probably should have reached out to you or to me 15, 20 years ago, and they didn't, and now a lot of their options have expired and they're really in a place where you know they're really in a between a rock and a hard place because they've let all those options run out, and
Mm,
and they've just but I really think it's at the heart of it, it's that they can't imagine who they would be in their identity post exiting their business, and I really
right.
think that's at the core of this. So I'm
Yes.
glad we started there. All right, but
Yes.
we got
Yes.
a lot of room, we got a lot of road to cover here, so I got to get moving. All right.
Okay.
So, tell us about who your clients are. Who do you work with? You mentioned individual level, but you mentioned organizations and
Yes.
doing keynotes. It sounds like you have a lot of things going on. So
Yes.
maybe you have several different clients, but who are you looking to work with?
Yeah. My ideal clients are really business owners who are, like you rightfully mentioned, who are looking to sell, exit. That would be one group. And they're just really unsure. They just are just daunted by life beyond, because you you said the reasons, that identity. Who do I become? What do I do with my routine? All of that stuff. And then the other audience, the other client that I work with is the new incoming business owner, let's say post
Mhm.
acquisition, right? They are needing to fill in some really big shoes or empty shoes. And they're
Mhm.
having to really build themselves up in that space where there's a
Mhm.
lot of resistance,
Yes.
because people are used to doing things a certain way, and maybe people are even quite loyal to the
Mhm.
person, their predecessor. Um,
Mhm.
and you find that, no matter how well you mean and how well you communicate your intentions, how transparent you are, people will still be fidgety. It's human nature.
Mhm.
So for both the business owner themselves, that's one-on-one coaching, right? The new leader, help
Mhm.
them through their own journey, but also their teams. That's where the group presentations are the key
Right.
come into play
Right.
from the workshop.
Leadership teams, I would imagine spouses, children, partnerships, things like that, right?
Every, I would say the critical groups decision making within
Hmm.
the context of business ownership.
Got
Whoever
it.
is going to
Okay.
lead the new,
Hmm.
either
Yes.
relinquish or
Hmm.
take over the new business.
No, I love it because
Right.
you're those two, and this is where I love what you do because it's a different approach than, you know, the transactional approach where you're picking a side. I'm a buy side, M&A advisor. I'm a sell side M&A advisor. I'm representing the buyer and I have a fiduciary obligation to make sure the buyer and I don't really care about the seller or I'm representing the seller and I don't represent the buyer. So like it's just a different approach. It's more it's it's a different way of thinking about it. It's like,
But let
hey,
me,
there's something's happening here. There's really more than one person involved
yes,
probably, but even if there was
yes,
only one person, like that person, that poor dude needs help. Okay.
yes, yes.
Or
You asked about my ideal clients. I forgot to qualify. There's a
Mhm.
really big qualifier I need to throw in there. Um, I would say the same people I described, but who feel the pain. Right? There are some
Mm.
people who are exiting, or some people who are coming, like incoming leaders, who
Mhm.
don't feel like they need the help. Right? For them, they
Mhm.
feel like they got it. If they don't feel the pain, they're probably not my ideal client. But those people who recognize,
Mhm.
well, I am not, why I'm just really having a hard time with this. I feel like my the transactional piece is taken care of. My legality
Mhm.
is straight. The value is straight. Even the finances are straight. All these other pieces, accounting is straight, that are transactional. But the human in you is just like, hmm, you just can't quite get yourself to move.
Mhm.
Or you have a team that's experiencing that. And you know for a fact that that's impacting whatever transition performance at the end of the day, right?
Mhm.
It's ROI at the organizational level. Um, yeah, that pain, people who recognize, who know, who feel that, okay, I need somebody who really can just help me with the human. Who am I going to be?
Mhm.
Who am I? And most importantly, Phil, how do we make this process as, I don't want to say comfortable, as less painful as possible?
Sure.
Because the basis of my framework is change is inevitable, right? We can
Mhm.
all postpone all we like, not make decisions, but it's inevitable. We know it's going to happen. We get to choose, though, how painful we make it.
Mhm.
And I'm not asking people to embrace change, right? Everybody says,
Hmm.
oh, so you're talking about, oh, yeah, of course we ought to embrace change. That's not what I'm talking about. No, Phil, you know this, that you're
Hmm.
not going to embrace change if change hurts you because you can't process it, right? So, what
Like
I
saying embrace pain. Yeah, nobody wants to embrace pain.
nobody wants to embrace pain, and change
Right.
tends to be
Hmm.
accompanied with uncertainty, which is very
Hmm.
uncomfortable, right? So what my framework, and I call my philosophy dancing with change instead of
Hmm.
embracing change or resisting change, because by
Hmm.
dancing with change, you treat change like a partner, a dance partner. You're moving with it
Hmm.
with understanding, right?
Hmm.
You're not just opening your arms.
Hmm.
You understand what this is. You know how to tame it so it doesn't
Hmm.
hurt as bad. It's going to hurt, but not as bad. And it gives you
Less
that sense
scary.
of less scary, and
I
puts you
like
back
that.
in control a little bit more. So my my tagline is don't embrace change, but learn to dance
Hmm.
with it because it's
Yeah,
inevitable.
that's I I think we've drifted into this the next question I had for you that really talks about, you know, well, you've I've heard you use these words. Business succession is not only transactional, it's also transitional. I think maybe we've entered into that question a little bit, but can you expand on that?
Yes. Well, the transaction is all about, you know, what you do on the surface, the physicalities. Here is the money. Here is the business. Bah, boo, boom. Right.
Mhm.
Transition is internal.
Okay.
So, and transactions always go in hand. Always are accompanied by transitions.
Hmm.
And and you can tell me, better than me even, there are quite a plethora of resources devoted towards the transaction part.
Hmm. For
Okay, make
sure.
sure the money is straight. Let's make sure that
Hmm.
your legals, your taxes are straight, as we've said before. But the
Hmm.
transition, which has to do with the person you become inside and the person you are inside, the way you see the world, that is lacking. That's what I call a transition.
Hmm. Yeah, in my thinking, that resistance. Once it to me, it's always I've always thought about it this way. There's some upfront resistance to
Yeah,
begin this process. Once
yeah,
someone begins the process of thinking about their future, whether it's estate planning or business succession, exit planning, really starting to decide what to do with my 30-year-old children, get them involved or not get them in, or whatever it is. Um, there's this resistance up front, but in my thinking, once that process starts, then we're good. but
yeah.
but I don't think that's the case. And
No,
then I think there's just no more thought about the human side of it. It's all focused on the valuation and the deal and the asset
right.
transfer. Are we
Yeah,
doing an equity sale or an asset sale? What are the tax implications? And
yeah,
everybody's like full on, full throttle. And then is there an earnout? And how do I get paid? And is the bank going to approve the loan? And it's all tactical. Nobody ever thinks about the human side of it anymore.
right, right. And you
Once the
too.
person commits, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'd be curious to hear from you, Phil. Actually, I think we talked about this briefly when we first met. Just how many deals, transactional deals, are hampered by this missing piece? Because you get ready, ready, ready. Sometimes you get ready, you get all these pieces ready, and then at the
Hmm.
end of, sometimes people just can't go through with it, or they change their mind, and then you're 2 years behind, and then
Well, so here's maybe a good way to think about a good way for me to answer that question. There's a phrase that we've all heard: time kills all deals. Well, what's causing the delay?
yeah,
The delay is probably fear,
here,
and that's a human element.
yeah,
Why isn't due diligence progressing? Why did the person, why did the other party stop returning my emails?
right,
Why is there a 3-week delay here?
right.
That's a human condition
Yes.
happening there. That's not they forgot to check their email for three
No,
weeks.
absolutely.
Something
Absolutely.
stopped because someone got afraid.
Right, exactly, exactly. And that's exactly the human aspects that I like to deal that I do deal with as part of
Hmm.
the transition, not
Hmm.
transaction.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Can you share an example of the impact that your work has had on somebody else, or maybe a moment that affirmed the power of this approach that we're talking about?
Sure. Yeah. I this framework that I have, I call it pivot.
Yes.
Part of my dance with change philosophy. I
Mhm.
already explained the dance with change, but pivot as in PIVOT. It stands for
Mhm.
five areas in our thinking where I've discovered most of our resistance resides. Right.
Mhm.
Anyway, every, quite just about every presentation I've given, people, I'm always shocked at how I think, oh, I'm just giving people tools to walk out with. So, next time they are faced with unexpected change, they can remember, oh, I need to pause. But I'm always shocked at how deeply transformational just the framework itself is. I've had somebody say to me, this one company local in Kalamazoo, they had called me in because they'd had some operational changes and the employees were unhappy. Morale
Shocker.
wasn't a shocker, right? Uh, Employees were just, the morale was just really low. Energy was just drained, and
Mhm.
the leadership were bending over backwards. I mean, they were very consultative and blah, blah, blah. It just wasn't going anywhere. And during the presentation, I had people share with me that because I give very interactive workshops,
Mhm.
presentations,
Mhm.
but I've had people share with me how my presentation goes beyond work.
Mhm.
It goes into who you are. My framework pivot goes into who you are as a human being and your relationship with change
Mhm.
beyond any one setting, right? And so the person that had hired me, about a week after I'd given my workshop, she said, "Hey, I wish I had copied that for you to see, but
Mhm.
it was so appreciative. People are now, we feel our staff are this renewed energy around here. Our folks are more willing to dance with change, not embrace change."
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
always, because my argument is you want people to expect change to be dynamic, hence the
Mhm.
metaphor dance, right? It's always going to be there. But they feel the teams are a lot more positive and a lot more um, willing to move with the operational changes and just happier. And I had one of the talks, somebody came up to me and said, "Oh, Kutso," and they were crying as I cry all the time,
Mhm.
because this is just very personal,
Mhm.
very, very personal stuff, because it gets into your head and your vulnerable places.
Sure. Right.
Yeah. So it's just deeply transformational at the
Mhm.
personal level beyond work.
Well, there's not often very powerful experiences or resources or skills that we learn at work that we can transfer to our personal lives. But dealing with change, I mean, that's every relationship that we have with our spouses and our children and our parents and our neighbors and the people we serve on in our communities, and change is happening all around us all the time. And man, what a great benefit to have some insight and some personal, resources where you can like really understand better how to dance with change. I want to learn how to dance with change because I don't know if I handle change all that well. I mean, I probably don't. So maybe we need to talk after this podcast here. But no, I can totally see that. Even like you said, even just the during a on-site with a client where they're just at the surface level hearing about the framework, even at that level having that experience, I can only imagine what a deep dive doing one-on-one coaching with you for a time period would be like.
Yeah,
So
no, it's
yeah.
always such an honor for me to be able to touch people's lives at such a deep level, based on truth as I know it, what life has
Hmm.
taught me through my academic training as well as
Hmm.
real life. This framework I developed was not something I developed in a lab or
Hmm.
it was
Sure.
borrowed from somewhere. I
Hmm.
created it over, during a season of turmoil, which
Hmm.
also overlapped with my doctoral studies. I happened
Hmm.
to study a theory that sharpened my understanding of how human beings make decisions during change.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That is called, that's organizational sense making, as they would
Hmm.
say. And
Hmm.
so I found that, as I was having my own lab, my own trials and tribulations
Hmm.
shaping this framework that I eventually birthed, I thought, oh my God, wow. So there is a relationship with that sense making
Hmm.
theory. There is a method to the madness. We
Hmm.
all do have a certain way in which we go through decision making during change. And so that's kind of it's always the biggest honor for me to know that everything I've lived has taught me this, and I can
Hmm.
share it honestly and humbly. This is what I life has taught me, I'm always so honored when I see it touching lives and when it
Hmm.
does make people look at their lives in a more empowered way.
Hmm. What I want to hear a little bit about your educational background and what drew you to that area of study for a career and to base your work around.
Yeah, well, I know I'm the one that's zigzagging. I told you I was gonna zigzag
Hmm.
with our conversation. It's like, yeah. So I've had a really diverse professional, academic and professional background.
Hmm.
First I was an economist, and then I did public policy, and then I got a couple of master. My undergrad was in economics, and then I got into international relations and development studies, and then my doctorate. That's where this was born. Okay, all
Hmm.
of that zigzagging
Hmm.
professionally, along with zigzagging around the world, because that's another big thing, has really helped me be comfortable with change and uncertainty.
Hmm.
And all of those experiences now leading onto my doctorate in
Hmm.
organizational sense making. Now I should say my doctorate, my dissertation, it's in business management,
Hmm.
right? So this was my dissertation on organizational sense making. Just solidified everything I had lived to that,
Mm.
from living around the world and
Sure.
having reinvented myself professionally so many
Hmm.
times, starting from scratch, I should say, so many times. So yeah, my this big, diverse, zigzagging
Hmm.
professionally has really made me quite the change person. No wonder I like talking about change.
Well, I really like that question because it gets into why people do what they do.
Yeah,
Why do you do what you do in your professional work? Why do I do what I do? I have a
yeah,
story as well, and so I love to give people the opportunity to talk about their story and maybe there's a little bit more there. I don't know if you want to expand. You said zigzagging around the world. I don't know what that means, but like you've had a lot of change in your life and so as you're contemplating, and I don't know what drives people to get a PhD. Honestly, I think they're crazy, but you had to choose a PhD in something. And I just love it when there's a correlation, I guess, between someone's lived experience and their professional work.
yeah. Well, I let me get into zigzagging, and then I'll talk about what you just said. I did move around quite a bit in my early adult years. I ended up living in on 5 different continents, 8 different
Oh wow.
countries. Yeah, I'm originally from South Africa and I'm in Michigan right now. That's where we are right now.
Hmm.
So, moving around as much as I have and teaches you how to be adaptable and
Hmm.
teaches you how subjective perspectives really are. Because what's true for one culture or one group is not
Hmm.
necessarily what's true for another, even if they're looking at the exact same thing. And you don't need different
Hmm.
cultures to tell you this, right? It's common
Right.
sense. But it's even more
Hmm.
stark when you're removed from a culture, because it's like, wow,
Hmm.
I thought this means this, but it means something else.
Hmm.
So I had the luck, actually, Phil. I wish I can claim that I nicely engineered my zigzag until it nicely culminated into my doctorate. I didn't. I just kind of fell into it. And when I did my dissertation on human sense making, I just needed a theory to base my whole study on.
Okay. Hmm.
And then this one fell on my lap, and I loved it. I love that the idea that we all have paradigms and we make decisions based on our paradigms, not based on an
Hmm.
objective truth out there. There
Hmm.
is no objective truth out there, at least I believe, right? And when I look at that theory and what lived my life has taught me, and what I was able to build into this framework, I see how choosing a paradigm is very powerful because that's what we do anyways, right? We
Sure.
choose paradigms from
Hmm.
which to interpret the world. So you want
Hmm.
to choose empowering interpretations of the world. And that's what my framework does. It helps you choose
Hmm.
empowering interpretations of uncertainty while you're
Hmm.
going through it.
Got
Does
it.
that make sense?
Okay. It partially. Um,
Oh,
no, no, it's good. It's academic, but it's so powerful to think about the fact that you know we're I'm thinking about our business owner clients who are listening to this podcast and thinking about the fact that their lives are going to change at some point, and are they going to change based on or with some proactive work that'll help make that a smoother process, or are they going to end up facing change when it's a reaction? And so I think what a lot of the people listening to this podcast are probably thinking, man, am I a good candidate to work with Dr. Kuzo here? So let's move toward that. Like, how would that, how would that look? Like, how would you define what would be a good fit for someone versus someone who probably isn't really a good fit to work with you?
right. Um, I already touched on some of that, but there's another piece that I haven't shared, which is
Mhm.
I love to partner with um, business brokers, financial planners,
Mhm.
people who work with succession plan in the succession planning space
Mhm.
as a way to complement their services, right? Where
Mhm.
they're a good candidate if they look at their Rolodex of available collaborators and they see, oh, I don't have anybody who can support my people with the
Mhm.
emotional, the messy stuff, the emotional, psychological stuff. So that's one, right? And then
Mhm.
two, the real clients, as we said earlier, um, if they're feeling that resistance, internal resistance, oh, I really don't want to go here, or their
Mhm.
teams are feeling that I just really don't want to. I don't want to deal with this. I'm ready financially and otherwise, but I'm just not ready
Mhm.
in my head for this big
Yeah.
transition. So, did that make sense?
Yes. Every single one of our clients needs to work with you. So is what you're telling me. So and
Yeah,
I
yeah,
feel the same way. I mean I think just that whole kind of ecosystem of the business broker, the CPA, the attorneys, the insurance people, the financial advisors, the tax people. Like that's, you know, where's the human element person, the change whisperer?
Right.
That's being part of that committee, so to speak, the group of advisors, the advisory board that's
Yeah.
helping this business transition. It's I completely see how you fit into that world, 100%, and I'm so glad that our paths crossed so that we can actually get some work done here together.
Oh,
So I
that'd be
think you
great.
answered that question. Good. I definitely, I know we got to move toward wrapping up here, but
Oh, yeah,
I'm
of
holding
course.
a copy of one of your books. So I believe you've authored two books. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm holding Dancing with Change,
Yeah.
and
I
your other book is No More Freedom, right? Yep.
No more free passes.
All free passes. No more freedom.
Yes.
I can't read my own writing here. No more free passes.
No, it's okay. No, it's really my bad. I don't know why I didn't send you both.
Oh, no, it's
But
fine.
and
Give
I'll
me a
tell
chance to read this one first.
right. Well, I figured that would be a great place to start, because truly this one, No More Free Passes, this is a memoir. It's a mini memoir that
Hmm.
explains the journey leading to the birth of
Oh, okay.
my framework. So,
Okay.
they can be read together individually. I usually actually, you can tell the bottom, my subtitle is for
Hmm.
strong women who refuse to prove
Oh,
themselves
I
anymore.
see. Okay.
So that one I find
Hmm.
resonates a lot more with strong, independent women because that's who
Hmm.
I am. And
Yes.
this talks about all how I learned to be more self-loving and how
Hmm.
that journey of um, not knowing how to be self-loving ended me in a position where I had to choose how I was going to navigate change when I had my back
Hmm.
against the wall, really. And it was at that point that I developed the Dance with Change philosophy and
Hmm.
pivot framework.
So it's the prequel.
Yes,
Prequel.
yes,
All
no
right.
more free passes.
I'm gonna watch the movie, then I'm gonna watch the prequel. Okay.
Exactly.
All right. I can
Yeah,
do that. I've done that before. I know all about that. Well,
yeah.
so just before we wrap up, just on the personal side, um, share a little bit about what you have going on personally, like maybe some hobbies or about your family or whatever you want to talk about.
Sure. Well, I am mom to three wonderful souls, 16-year-old and 12-year-old twins. So I'm very busy.
Mm.
But at
Hmm.
the core, what really gives me a lot of joy is dance and yoga. And
Mm.
both dance and yoga have very much influenced how I look at life because I
Hmm.
truly believe that we're here on earth to enjoy it. I'm all about joy. I think joy is the purpose. And that's
Hmm.
why I so wish for everybody to find a more harmonious, less painful way to move through change so we can
Hmm.
move through change with less pain. Uh,
Yes.
because, that's my grounding right
Hmm.
there. So, yeah, that's who I am.
We're ending with joy. We started with pain and we're ending with joy. So
There you
we're in a
go.
good spot. We've made a good transition throughout this podcast here. How can someone get in touch with you if they want to track you down?
Sure. Yeah, they can. I think LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Just
Hmm.
Dr. Khutso Madubanya. But I also have my website,
Hmm.
dancewithchange.com, one word. And my email
Perfect.
is info@dancewithchange.com. So
Okay.
dance with change,
Great.
one word.
Great. Is there anything we didn't cover that you wanted to talk about before we wrap up?
Um, no, I feel that we covered everything really well, Phil. I
Good.
don't need to convince you or your readers that there is value
Hmm.
in addressing the human elements, the human aspects of transition. I mean of succession.
Hmm.
So hey, I am here. I'd be
Yeah, I
very,
mean,
very, I'd be honored to get to partner with those that need my help.
yeah, I think that's the biggest takeaway for me is I think a lot of people don't realize that there are resources out there and that you exist and that, because that resistance to change is a real thing, and that human side is just, as we've been talking about throughout the podcast, is just so often overlooked, and it just doesn't show up because we're so focused on the deal. And so we need to incorporate you into our practice, and bring you alongside.
I would love
So
that.
yeah. All right, thank you
Lovely.
again, Dr. Kuzo. So great to have you share with us today.
Thanks for having me, Phil.
Take care.
Bye.